He was, by all accounts, verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive. But he believed in Brian's talent. And Surfin' comes out, and it's a local hit. And the Beach Boys were calling in under all sorts of different voices and getting all their friends to call in.
From the moment Mick and Keith met through to U2 as a high school band in Dublin, how did our biggest music legends make the leap? Passion, talent, luck, and even scandal often came together to propel these stars from obscurity to household name. The stories, the journey, the wild behind the scenes, and much more. I'm Dave Anthony, and I'm the host of From Garage to Stadiums. Welcome to Garage to Stadiums. Today's episode is the story of the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys are an American rock band formed in 1961 in Hawthorne, California, a suburb of Los Angeles, just about 12 miles from Hollywood. From the start, it was a family affair. The original founding lineup was incredibly mostly made up of teenagers and included Brian, Dennis, and Carl Wilson, their cousin Mike Love, and a close family friend, Al Jardine. Starting as a garage band, they quickly became known for their rich vocal harmonies and songs that captured teenage life in early 1960s Southern California, including songs about surfing, cars, and young romance. That early formula struck a chord, helping them sell over 100 million records worldwide. At the heart of the group's creative direction was Brian Wilson, the eldest Wilson brother and the band's principal songwriter and producer. Over time, Brian came to be recognized as a musical genius and one of the most innovative figures in pop music, known for his layered orchestrations, influences from classical and jazz music, and his forward-thinking approach to recording, which impressed artists like Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Elton John, and others. One of the most intriguing chapters in the band's history centers around a long-shelved project called Smile, an ambitious album Brian began in 1966 that was never officially released at the time. For decades, it was considered one of the great lost albums of rock history. It eventually surfaced 37 years later, and as you'll hear in this episode, our guest today played a key role in bringing that music to light. Here to discuss the Beach Boys is our guest, David Leaf. David's been associated with the Beach Boys for 5 decades, starting with his biography, The Beach Boys and the California Myth, and the recently updated version called God Only Knows, which examined the behind-the-scenes tensions and family history that had never been previously covered publicly. According to music critic Richie Unterberger, Leaf was, quote, the first author to write extensively and honestly about the Beach Boys. David has just released his latest book called Smile, The Rise, Fall, and Resurrection of Brian Wilson, based on that long-lost album of the same name, and directed a documentary on the efforts to resurrect the album after 37 years in the vaults called Beautiful Dreamer, Brian Wilson and the Story of Smile, which was released in 2004. His honors, David Leaf's honors, include a Peabody Award for intelligent, powerful, and moving stories told in broadcast and digital media. Since 2010, David has been teaching undergraduate courses at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music in Los Angeles, including courses on rock documentary, the legends of songwriting, the Beatles, and Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. Welcome to Garage to Stadiums, David.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I love the title of the show.
Well, thank you very much. Let's get started. We've had some incredible authors and film directors, film producers on this show, but I must say your story is unique. And I know you've probably told the story a few times, but do you want to recount for our audience, a global audience, how you came to be involved with the Beach Boys? It's an incredible story starting way back in the early 70s.
It's kind of unbelievable, but when I became obsessed with Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys and Smile in the fall of 1971, it was because of a Tom Nolan story in Rolling Stone magazine, which was timed, it was a cover story timed to promote the release of the Surf's Up album. And reading that story inspired me to buy the Surf's Up album. And I heard that Surf's Up was as great as everything the article said about this long lost album called Smile. And the song before Surf's Up, Till I Die, was one of the saddest and most beautiful songs I'd ever heard. And it was like, okay, so Smile is as great as the article says. Till I Die proves to me that he can still do it. And about a week after that, the Beach Boys happened to be playing at Georgetown University near where I was going to school. And I went to the show, and it was an amazing 2.5 hour concert. I'd never seen anything like it. And my roommate and I became obsessed with Brian and the Beach Boys and the whole story. And and I was in kind of my youthful outrage period. I was in college in DC during the Nixon administration. And I guess I was kind of angry about everything that was going on in the world. And in reading this story about Brian, it was like something didn't seem right. And my roommate says, well, if you're so upset about it, why don't you do something about it? And I said, okay, I'm going to move to California, write a book about Brian Wilson, become his friend, and help him finish Smile, which was, like a high school president saying, one day I'm going to be president of the United States. It was that unlikely a circumstance. And
Wow.
I moved to California in 1975.
But I understand within a couple of weeks you met one of the Beach Boys at least, and then another, well, Brian, I think. Did you not?
Well, actually, it was I was in California 36 hours. I was from New York and on unemployment, and I went to the unemployment office in Santa Monica to transfer my claim from New York to California. It was $95 a week, and in those days, you could be a starving writer on $95 a week in LA and see the ocean. So that was a pretty good deal. Anyway, I came out of the unemployment office, which was at the corner of 5th and Broadway in Santa Monica, and I crossed the street going north, and walking towards me was Dennis Wilson. And I was not shy. I went up to him and said, "Hi, Dennis. My name is David Leaf. I just moved to California to write a book about your brother, Brian." And his response was he like, "Good luck," and because he realized kind of the absurdity and impossibility of it. But within 3 years of that meeting with Dennis on the sidewalk, my first book, The Beach Boys and the California Myth, was in stores.
Man, that is such a story of inspiration to just say, I'm going to do this, and determined enough to actually see it through, which we'll hear by the end of this show, the incredible finish to this story. What astonishes me, David, about this band is how quickly they made it big. They had the first song, these high school kids, Brian's 19, Dennis is 17, and Carl's 15. Their cousin Mike Love joins them, and Al Jardine, who's a neighbor friend. And they have a deal with Capitol Records after they had a regional hit, Surfin'. And all of a sudden, in 1962, these guys are, really the first big rock band. They're way ahead of the Beatles in that regard.
If we look at rock history, which your show certainly does in a great way, I talk about the Killer Bees, my three favorite groups: the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Bee Gees. The Beatles, it took 5 years of playing dives in Hamburg and clubs in Liverpool and half-empty dance halls in Liverpool. So it took them 5 years to get a record deal. The Bee Gees were at it even longer before they had a hit record. And they were almost a decade before they had a hit. The Beach Boys had a hit and a major label deal like within a few months. It was almost as if they had hit the rock star lottery. It was that fast.
In every story, there seems to be some mercurial figure behind the band that propels them, believes in them, pushes them, does something with them. And of course, in this case, it's their father, Murray. What impact did he have on the boys?
So Murray Wilson was a failed songwriter. That was a little bit of a hobby of his, if you will. He wrote songs, one of which actually there's sheet music for the two-step sidestep in the era of the cha-cha-cha. But he was really unsuccessful in the music business, and he had his own business that paid the bills for the Wilson household. He was, by all accounts, verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive. Now, what impact that has, you would need a forensic psychologist to figure the amount of damage done. But the other impact he had that is often overlooked is he believed in Brian's talent. He recognized Brian's talent so that he turned the garage of the Wilson home in Hawthorne into a music room, put a piano in there, and bought Brian a reel-to-reel tape recorder, which is where Brian really learned how to deconstruct the four freshman harmonies, so that when the Beach Boys became a group, he knew how to teach them harmonies. And their blend, their vocal blend, is really the story. So Murray has, before there's a Beach Boys, he has a significant influence. Then they have this fluke hit, absolutely a fluke. Now, what's his role in that? And the boys play him this song that they've called Surfin', and he knows a local independent producer and introduces them. And all of a sudden, they're in the studio with Height Morgan, and Surfin' comes out, and it's a local hit, in large part because they had a call-in show on a radio station, and if you called in and chose one of three songs, that became part of the playlist. And the Beach Boys were calling in under all sorts of different voices and getting all their friends to call in. So they were helping their own success along. At any rate, so they have this hit, and Murray takes a demo tape they've recorded to Capitol, and a guy named Nick Vinay hears it and signs them almost instantly. And when they signed, you've got, Brian's in junior college. Mike is not going to college. As he joked, I was in the oil business, gas and oil. Can I check your tires? He was working at a gas station in the day and then working at his father's place at night because he had gotten a girl pregnant and they were married. And so he was a grown-up already. He's 21. Yeah. But wow. Carl was 15. Dennis was 17. And Al Jardine, not believing there was any future in the Beach Boys, had said, okay, good luck, guys, had left. And David Marks, who's a neighbor friend of Carl's who used to jam with him all the time, another 15-year-old, joined the group. And he was on the first 4 albums. It is just an astonishingly fast rise from nowhere to them having a double-sided hit single, Surfin' Safari on one side and 409 on the other side. And instantly, they found their two appealing brands, if you will, Surfin' and Cars.
In 1962, the Beach Boys were signed by Capitol Records. They put out Surfin' Safari, and ascension to stardom happened almost immediately. They were called America's bands, and the albums and hits just kept on coming.